Holy City Center Radio. It is episode 236, and I am your host, Christian Sanger. Today is Friday, March 15th, 2024. Better late than never, right? Happy to be here. I hope you have a great Friday or had a great Friday, depending on when this episode gets out. Unfortunately, with traveling and everything, as expected, things didn't go quite as smoothly as I thought. Now, don't get me wrong, traveling's been great, but I always think, oh, I'll have plenty of time to do this. I won't get distracted by hanging out with my family and, whatever else. I'll get all my work done. I'll get up early. And no, of course not. I've been sleeping in, relaxing at my parents' house. So apologies if the episode's a little late whenever this does get out. We're hoping to get it out Friday. If not, it'll be in your feed when it gets there. The news won't change. These will still be stories that happened. I appreciate your understanding. Yes, as I mentioned in the last episode, I traveled back to Connecticut to spend some time with my family. No special reason, just a regular visit. Just was able to find a pretty cheap flight and had some time, and was like, yeah, let's go see the fam. So very happy to be here. Nothing too exciting has happened yet. I haven't been here that long as of this recording, but was able to, obviously see my parents as well as my brother and his family, including my niece and nephew. Got to spend some time with them, which has been great. And looking forward to the next few days, hanging out with all of them and just enjoying time with family. In addition to that, it is March Madness for all you college basketball fans out there. Very exciting times. My UConn Huskies are doing well. The women have won the Big East tournament, which was exciting. The men are currently in their Big East tournament, won their first game. Their second game is a little bit later today when I'm recording this, and I'm hoping they can bring home their conference tournament title as well. And then very excited to see on Sunday where all these teams end up going and then filling out the brackets and all that good stuff. Speaking of, I may be doing a league, a bracket league of sorts, picks, and anybody can join and maybe be able to pick out a prize. So I'll have more details on that if I get it done. But I'm hoping to do, some kind of bracket tournament style thing where anybody who's listening right now, anybody who follows Holy City Center can join, and the winner can get some kind of prize is my hope. So more details on that later. So anyway, that's what's going on here. Things are good. I'm happy. With that quick note, when I do travel, I don't have my full equipment with me, so the audio quality, I can't check it, in real time, essentially, because I don't have my headphones. The website I use when I'm recording doesn't really show me the levels, so I apologize if I'm a little bit too close or too far from the mic at times, or the audio isn't as good as usual. So bear with me, but usually it's not too bad when I travel. But every once in a while, I might lose sight of where I'm holding the mic. But in any event, enough about that. Let's get into the news. On the last episode, I kind of poo-pooed this whole, you know, not the story itself, but I kind of was talking about conspiracies. We're talking about this Boeing whistleblower who was found dead at the Holiday Inn on Savannah Highway last Saturday, and the conspiracy theories were spinning out immediately, because he was, in the middle of a lawsuit where he was giving a deposition and talking about alleged safety concerns at Boeing. And, he was found dead. And even though the coroner ruled it, he died by a self inflicted gunshot wound, people immediately think this is a setup. Someone did this to him. And I'm not about to say that I'm fully on board with, hey, there's something suspicious here. But I'm also backing off a little bit that there may be more to the story. Now, again, not saying that someone did this, who knows, but there are some things that aren't adding up. The gentleman's name, John Barnett, his lawyer came out and said, they're all shocked by his death. They thought he was in good spirits. He seemed like he was looking forward to continuing this process of giving depositions in this lawsuit. He didn't come out and say, we think something suspicious has happened. and there's lots of situations where people die by suicide where everyone around them is shocked by it. Not everyone who dies by suicide, leaves clues or says things that people, when they hear that they ultimately died by suicide, they go, "Yeah, we saw that coming." That's not always the case. Yes, sometimes there's people where you hear it. Family and friends aren't they're saddened. Maybe they're shocked that it happened at that moment, but they're not, they didn't think it was out of the realm of possibility. But there are those situations where someone who dies by suicide doesn't really say anything to anybody, doesn't indicate that they're thinking about going that route. I mean, it does happen. So just because people are shocked and didn't see this coming doesn't mean something suspicious happened. But nonetheless, when the lawyer said that, that kind of got people talking again. Hey, look, his lawyer says he was in good spirits. He didn't see this coming. And then an even more damning thing where it's really starting to add fuel to this fire is a story that ABC News 4 first had about a close family friend of John Barnett. Talked to them and said that Barnett predicted he might wind up dead and that a story could surface that he killed himself. So this is really, like I said, just adding to all this speculation, and people wondering, hey, is this really what happened, or is there something more nefarious here? And again, I'm not saying I'm on board with that. The investigations should play out, and we'll see what happens. Just because a coroner ruled it a death by suicide doesn't mean, when as the police continue to investigate, that something else doesn't come out. But that was the initial ruling. But things could change. So I'm not fully on board with this conspiracy. But this is certainly a compelling story that this friend said. So his friend, her name is Jennifer. Uh, she said, quote, "I know that he did not commit suicide. There's no way," end quote. Jennifer said they talked about this exact scenario playing out. They talked about his upcoming deposition in Charleston, and she knew that he was involved in filing this damaging complaint against Boeing. And then he even told her that Boeing had retaliated against him when he blew the whistle about their alleged unsafe practices. She didn't elaborate on what exactly, um, you know, this retaliation supposedly was, but she did say that he told her that. For those who don't remember, just as a quick recap, Barnett, he had worked as a quality manager at Boeing for 30 years, actually more than 30 years. He had recently retired and moved back to Louisiana, where he was looking after his mother, and then he was back in Charleston for this lawsuit, giving his testimony. Um, his friend said that he wasn't concerned about his safety, and she knew that because she actually asked him, and he apparently said that no, he's not scared, but if anything happens to me, it's not suicide. Again, just assuming she's telling the truth, and I have no reason to doubt it. That's extremely interesting. Now, just because he said that months ago doesn't mean that internally his mind didn't change and he did commit suicide, or excuse me, died by suicide. But it is interesting that he supposedly said that to her. And so she's just adamant that he did not, do this. She says he loved his life too much. He loved his family too much. And she just is outright denying that this happened. So she even went on to say that she believed that someone wanted to, quote, shut him up, end quote. So, again, who knows? The investigation needs to play out. Maybe more details will shed light on what did or did not happen, but certainly an interesting quote from a close friend, especially since he apparently told her directly, if something happens to me, it was not suicide. So we'll see where this story goes. Now, meanwhile, his attorney has said that they're still prepared to go to trial in June, despite the fact that the testimony that Barnett was giving wasn't finished. He was actually supposed to show up on the day he was found dead for more testimony. So even though they didn't finish what they wanted, they still are planning to go to trial in June. I mentioned at the top of the show it's March Madness, and although I'm sure all of you who are listening do not care about the University of Connecticut, my alma mater, are probably tired of me mentioning them on the podcast when I do. and I don't blame you. It's not your school. Why do you care? But I'm sure some of you, whether you went there or not, are interested in how College of Charleston is doing. Well, the College of Charleston women's basketball team is currently in their conference tournament, the Coastal Athletic Association, or CAA, and hopefully they will perform well. They're one of the top seeds. So they're just getting underway. When I'm recording this, they haven't played a game yet. But the men's tournament wrapped up. And if you don't already know, yes, the Cougars are going back to the big dance. That is because they won their conference tournament, and it was a dramatic game. They won 82-79 in overtime over Stony Brook in the CAA championship game in Washington, D.C. Just a very dramatic game. I watched it. As I just said, went to overtime. Anytime that happens, especially in a conference championship game in a league like the CAA, where the only way you're going to make it to the NCAA tournament is if you win your conference tournament. If you're a smaller school like the College of Charleston, that's usually the only way you can make it to the main tournament at the end of the year, because there's the bigger schools, whether they win their championship or not, they tend to get more of those automatic bids, or I'm sorry, not automatic bids, but at large bids they call them, because the bigger schools play more ranked teams, stronger programs, and things like that. So College of Charleston, they could go undefeated, but if they don't win their conference tournament, that one loss prevents them from going to the NCAA tournament. So it's always a big deal, no matter how good of a season the team had. And CFC had a great season. They were the number one seed in their conference. So they easily could have lost this game, and that would have been it for them. But thankfully, the Cougars pulled it out, and this is their second straight conference title, which means it's their second straight year going to the NCAA tournament. Coach Pat Kelsey has done an amazing job with this program. I'm excited to see if they can make some noise when the tournament starts next week, and also interested to see what he continues to do for this program in the future. He's just a great coach. He's heavily invested. At least it seems he's heavily invested in the city, and I'm really excited to them. So congrats to the Cougars. Looking forward to seeing them in the big tournament. Hypocrisy, thy name is Nancy Mace. That's right, National Nancy, when she hasn't been raging at George Stephanopoulos over that make-believe drama from we talked about in the last episode. She came out with a crazy request. Representative Nancy Mace, in her reelection campaign, put out a statement asking one of her primary challengers, Catherine Templeton, to drop out of the race. Why should she drop out of the race? Was there some big controversy? Did Templeton say something horrible? Did some scathing report come out about something shady she did? No. The reason they believe that Templeton should drop out of the race is because former President Donald Trump endorsed Representative Nancy Mace. We already talked about that. And now Mace and her campaign are saying that Trump's endorsement means that her campaign is stronger than ever and Republicans need to unite behind her. They said it's time for Templeton to step aside and support the only candidate supported by our party's leader and the only candidate who can win in November. To do otherwise would be to oppose the direction of our party leader Donald Trump has set for us, end quote. So basically, their logic is, dear leader, who everyone must bow down to, must never question, has endorsed me, so you should drop out. Pathetic. What makes it even more pathetic is that Mace's campaign only asked Templeton to drop out, but none of the other primary challengers, including her former campaign manager who's running against her. If you're only going to call out one candidate, it's clear that that's the one you're worried about. I mean, this is clear as day that obviously Mace's campaign is worried that Templeton's going to give her, maybe not win, but they think she would have the best chance of any challenger to beat her. And even if they don't actually think Templeton will pull it out, they just don't want they just want this to be an easy race. They don't want to have any attacks going their way that can then be used in the when they actually get to the election, when they face off against whoever wins the Democratic primary. Basically just scared, and also that they'll lose money, having to buy ads and campaign in a primary. They're hoping that they'll drop out and they're not going to have to worry about that. I mean, this is so transparent and pathetic, but I'm not surprised at all. which makes it even more ridiculous. And why I said this is hypocritical at the top is because in 2022, former President Donald Trump endorsed Mace's primary challenger at that time. That was Katie Arrington. Did Mace drop out? Obviously not, as she is still in office. So to say that they must rally behind President Trump, and because his endorsement is basically the word of God in their minds, that everyone else should just bow down and accept it and leave the race. She didn't do that 2 years ago when she didn't get the endorsement. Shouldn't be surprised, but that's National Nancy for you. And lastly, the Post and Courier came out with a story talking about how medical students are starting to avoid states with abortion bans. This should come as no surprise. I encourage you to visit the link in the show notes so you can read the full story. But the gist of it is that Match Day is coming up. Match Day is when medical students find out what hospitals they're going to be going to, to continue their training and possibly spend the rest of their careers. As sometimes when they're matched with a hospital, they work their way through that system, as their training and education continues and end up staying there. But we're finding out that fewer and fewer of them are applying to states with abortion bans or strict abortion limits, which of course could impact a state like South Carolina, which already has a physician shortage, especially in rural areas, and especially when it relates to OBGYN providers. As we talked about before, this state has several counties that don't have an OBGYN doctor or practice at all anywhere in the county, which is shocking to think about, that these poor folks in rural areas either just go without care or have to travel long distances to find the appropriate care. And it's only going to get worse. So the number of applicants to states with bans has declined by 3% overall. And among those looking for an OBGYN residency specifically, it was more than double the decline compared to states without bans. So we're going to get less doctors coming to the state, specifically OBGYN doctors, which is just going to further the problems we have in the state, especially, again, in those rural areas. And we're just going to have less quality doctors overall. Even if this isn't their specialty, certain doctors may not want to come to states with those bans because they want to provide appropriate medical care. And so even if it's not, their focus, they want to be able to go somewhere where they can refer one of their patients to a doctor that they can trust and that they know can do the appropriate thing for them. Just a clear and obvious fallout from the overturn of Roe v. Wade. We've had so many things that ruling, it was just clear what sort of issues it was going to cause, and this is just yet another one. That'll do it for this edition of Holy City Center Radio. Thank you so much for listening. I hope you enjoy your weekend. Hopefully, I'll have an episode for you on Monday. Again, I'm away. I always think I'm going to do these things, and they're either late or don't happen. But hopefully, I'll be talking to you again on Monday. If not, you'll hear from me next week at some point. I really appreciate your support. If you have some time, there's just a little bit of time left. March 22nd is the last day to vote for anyone in Best of Charleston, but I really appreciate votes for Holy City Center in the 3 categories that I am a finalist in: Best Local Twitter/X account, Best Local Social Media Influencer, and Best Local Website. Thank you to Lindsay Marie Collins with LMC Sound System for producing this and every episode of Holy City Center Radio, and a big thank you to Tyler Boone, whose music you hear in each and every show. Have a fantastic weekend. I hope you enjoy it. I hope the weather in Charleston is fantastic right now. Surprisingly, the weather in Connecticut has been pretty darn good so far, so I hope it's still warm just like it was when I left the Holy City, and you have a lot of fun this weekend. Until I speak to you again, good night. Good luck.